Y'all had a bit of a knucklehead moment in this one where I forgot to hit record on my primary audio. Had to use the backup audio on the camera for most of the video. Just hang with us because this is one of our most fun videos we've ever done. Lots of good banter, lots of good discussion. So please don't let the bad audio from this knucklehead influence you too much. College football nerds, we are here talking Penn State and Michigan. Y'all knew we were going to talk about this game. Come on, we got a late start this week, but knuckleheads, we're talking about this game. I want to give a shout out to a Penn State fan, Stephen Light, and a Michigan fan. I think he's a Michigan fan. I always asking Michigan questions. Benjamin V. These two show up and show out every week in our live show, Josh, in the comments, and they're always respectful in the comments. We have a hard time sometimes because we go on late. People are a little bit lathered up, and it gets chippy in the comments. So there's two, one on each side that we want to give a shout out to this one. Josh, this game, we talked about this game right before we hit record. This is a tough one to pick, man. But there's an interesting note about, like, I got an argument earlier this week, small argument, it was a respectful discussion, I should say, about Penn State's defense, because I said Penn State's defense is good, they're not elite. We might can say the same about Michigan's defense because we don't know yet. The reason we don't know is because of the offenses these two teams have played, especially Michigan. Why don't you share some numbers with us on just how bad those have been?
Yeah, so we went and looked at the scoring offenses that have been faced by these two teams, and I've got to be honest, it may be the worst set of scoring offenses that I've ever seen a P5 team play by midway through the season. Michigan has played 5 teams ranked 98th or worse in scoring, 4 teams in the bottom 10. 4 of the bottom 10 have all played Michigan in week 7. That is Indiana. So we'll start the highest. Maryland is the best, and they're only actually 40th in the country. Indiana is the second best, and they're 98th. Third best would be UConn at 121st. Hawaii is next, 124th. Iowa is 127th in the country. And Colorado State, the Rams, would be the worst scoring offense in the country, 131st. Now, before you get too excited if you're a Penn State fan, you have not faced anyone in the top 40 yourselves. The best offense that Penn State's faced was 43rd in Ohio. Purdue is 48th. Central Michigan is 88th. Auburn, as we keep saying, and not a good team, 112th in the country in scoring offense. And Northwestern currently tied with UConn for 121st in scoring offense. So, yeah, pretty spectacular here. Between the two teams, they have played 5 of the worst 10 scoring offenses in the country. And the defenses have great statistics. And it's not like I'm bashing them on that side, but man, does it make it hard to evaluate.
Yeah, and before y'all get mad, we have a long-standing tradition on this show because we've covered a lot of Clemson games in saying that you playing bad teams does not make your team bad. I saw somebody on Twitter, I keep bringing up these arguments I get into, but somebody on Twitter today, I think it was a Tennessee fan, said, yeah, but Ohio State hasn't played anybody. They can't be good. Georgia hasn't played anybody. Alabama hasn't played anybody. This is the most ridiculous thing. Like, are you telling me if 2020 Alabama or 2019 LSU played unranked teams 0 to 12, or 1 to 12, that means they can't be good? That's silly. So you can still have a good team, a good defense, and play bad offenses. That's not what we're saying. We just thought it was a really interesting stat, and it also speaks to how much we're going to struggle from here on out picking these two teams and picking a winner for this one. Josh, I'm going to ask you now, because we're going to shift to offense a little bit, because what we were talking about was this is going to be a struggle bus game, right, in terms of field position and being able to score. Vegas has got this over at 52.5. I'm hammering that under. But does it come down to the quarterbacks in this situation and who you like more, Clifford or JJ? Like, is that where you're at right now?
Well, that was my thought, right? Was that the quarterback situation seems to be the thing that matters the most in this kind of game, because in my mind, looking at the defenses and sort of where they're at, I kind of start to think, okay, this is going to be a game driven by turnovers. So the better quarterback is probably going to be the quarterback least likely to turn the ball over. You can go look at Alabama for the way that goes if you have a bad quarterback. And I think personally, I would probably pick Clifford over McCarthy. I know some Michigan fans are probably screaming about that. People know that I'm not that high on Clifford. I still think he's a better quarterback than McCarthy. I didn't like what I saw against Iowa in particular. I think when things are kind of easy for him, he looks pretty good. But when things are difficult, I just don't feel like he's got a full grasp of the position. But that's the quarterback in isolation. And I know you made a counterpoint when we were talking about this earlier that obviously it's not just about the quarterback, right?
Yeah, it's not just about the quarterback. And for me, I think I like Clifford more now as a quarterback, especially with his 17 years of experience. Um, but I think I like Michigan's skill players a little more. Now, Ronnie Bell hasn't shown up as much as I expected him to this year. It might be coming off that injury, might be part of it. But Corum's a dude. I think that he's, you know, the thing that I think a lot, and this is something you've talked about on the defensive side of the ball a lot for teams in terms of like big time matchups, explosive plays matter. Michigan, for all of their faults in the last couple of years offensively, they've been able to manage, I don't care what game it is, including Georgia last year, they've managed some forcing coverage bust, explosive plays, or something in the run game that's a 50, 60-yard touchdown run. And I'm not saying Penn State can't do that, but in terms of like being part of the DNA of the offense, I think it's partly skill players, partly scheme. And that's why, at least early in this discussion, I'm leaning a little bit Michigan, but I'm also surprised, Josh. Two things, and I want you to talk about this. 52.5 over under, 7-point favorite for Michigan. We saw Tennessee was only a 3-point favorite traveling to LSU last week. NC State was a 3.5-point favorite hosting unranked Florida State. 7-point favorite. That seems like a bigger number than what I think it should be based on how much I'm struggling to pick this game.
It does, and there are a couple things there that are hard to unpack. One is the over under sitting there in the 50s, which isn't a high number, but for this one it feels like it is. I think that's indicative of the fact that in football it's kind of hard to hold teams below 25 points. It certainly happens a lot more in the Big Ten than it does a lot of other conferences. Let's just be real. But in general, if you have functional offenses, they're going to hit some big plays, and you can throw up enough jump balls over the course of the game that you can score 20 points. Um, I think the number that Michigan is laying here is sort of surprising. I mean, I think Penn State is a good football team, and I think it really speaks to the fact that they do have a lot of confidence in Michigan, in Vegas. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it comes down to the skill players that Michigan has, their explosiveness. I have a lot of faith in the ability for Michigan to find a guy like Corum or Ronnie Bell that can make them a big play downfield. I have a lot less faith right now in Penn State. I know they have a good pair of young running backs, but when I look at the receiving core, Parker Washington, he's not Johan Dotson, and Lambert Smith is not quite some of the guys they've had of yore. I think they've got solid receivers. I don't know that they have a dude. I mean, Dotson was a dude for them, and I think it's probably one of the more underrated losses in college football that they don't really have that piece, and it makes everything a lot more janky, for lack of a better word. And I think what Vegas is essentially hinting is that Michigan has more pieces to try to find a way to score points, to put 20, 30 points on the board, and do it with chunk plays. But in both cases, I think what you're seeing really is a reflection of Michigan's skill players being a little more scrappy, a little more explosive. And then Clifford, who's a very hot and cold quarterback, but has the ability to make some hero throws and some hero plays. And he can be scrappy and scramble and extend a drive and score points. And so you end up with two teams. And what I really feel like is going to be in a game where no one's going to really have a lot of rhythm. I don't really feel like there's going to be a lot of consistent production offensively for either team. I think you're just going to see maybe some random spurts and scores. As I said, in my mind, it's more a turnover-driven thing. And, how do you evaluate that? It's tough.
And Josh, Penn State fans are going to rightly say, wait a minute. Y'all always say that even against bad teams, if you can go on the road and beat a name brand team and beat the brakes off of them, that says something good about you. And what Penn State did to Auburn, to me, is something, it says something good about Penn State that we can't just throw away, right? Like, Georgia beat them about the same at home. Penn State went on the road and did this to them. And so I don't want to completely dismiss that. I think they still deserve credit for that in a way that should help us, inform us on our pick in this game. And that's probably one of the reasons I'm struggling with this 7-point spread, because I don't think Auburn's a good team at all. Like, I think they're bad. They're going to have a losing record. They're going to fire their coach. But I think when Auburn was still 2-1, hosting a big team, crowd lathered up, beating them 41-12 means something.
And they still had TJ Finley for half that game. We keep bringing that up. Like that, their offense.
That's not a good thing, Josh. That's a negative. That's not a positive.
Well, it's a relative positive, right? So we've seen them a couple weeks now with Robbie Ashford, and as you say in the South, God bless them. They don't have a passing game right now at all. And TJ Finley is not a great quarterback, but he was more functional than what they've got right now, which is just a bag lit on fire left on someone's porch, okay? And a
bag full of what?
It's a bag full of demonetization is what it is. Yeah. And Penn State did actually have to face an Auburn team that was playing for something, I think. Now, there is a little bit in my mind that was a game that was 14-6 at the half. And then Penn State got up, and it did really seem pretty clear that with a quarterback injury and with the score getting away, Auburn quit. So I have a hard time judging based on that, but I'm still impressed.
Well, but Michigan went into Kinnick, got a 13-point win over Iowa, and it was just 13-0 at the half. Michigan managed 7-6, 7-7. That's the four-quarter scores. But here's something that I thought was a little impressive because of what I expected to see when I looked at the Penn State game based on watching it and how I remembered it, and the Michigan game versus Iowa based on watching it and how I remembered it, is that I felt like they got a lot of short fields and converted those short fields into points. But I'm looking at Michigan, Iowa here, and you've got 75-yard drive, 54 yards, 61 yards, 67. Like, these are drives down the field, and for all of Iowa's offensive problems, they've still got a great defense. And Michigan moved the ball down the field to get their points. Same thing with Penn State. They had a lot of long drives where they got their points, and that's maybe where Vegas is seeing this 52.5. But in general, I have concerns about both of these offenses being able to score against the defenses, which brings in mega variability. One pick six, one block punt could turn this game on its ear. But tell me what the model says, and then we'll go off of that.
So we took the numbers and we fed them into the model to sort of see what we could get out of it. And I think the results are pretty interesting. The first thing that you want to take away is that Penn State's offensive and defensive numbers are skewed by competition. And in particular, the defensive numbers, 91% of opponent rushing averages and 84% of opponent passing averages. That's a good pass defense, and it's a pretty darn average run defense. It's surprising to me, and I think to some degree you can chalk it up to who they've played, right? Their opponents only average 3 yards a carry and a little under 7 yards per attempt. But it isn't great numbers. And Michigan is better, 77% against the run, 83% against the pass. But those numbers are still not elite, either one of them. 77% against the run is very good. 83% against the pass, I would say, is good. And I think even worse there, Michigan's opponents, a little over 3 yards a carry, almost 6 yards per attempt, which is pretty miserable. And when the numbers are that low, it makes it hard for teams to distinguish themselves. So I think that's an important caveat, both in our model and probably every other metric, is anytime you try to do opponent adjustments, it kind of penalizes these two teams because you can't hold teams to 0 yardage. You just can't. It's almost impossible in the sport of football to do that versus any sort of competently coached football team. Michigan has a significant edge in yardage, 6 yard per play to 5 yard per play. And where that turns around is a 37-24 scoring margin. So it has it about 13 points different Again, the scoring model is unique to each team based off past performance, and I think that does reflect the fact that Michigan has been more consistent in scoring. Their floor has been about 27 points. Penn State's floor is 17. You end up with here 61 points predicted. So our model is actually suggesting the over, and it's suggesting Michigan to cover. I don't know that I buy that for all the reasons we just talked about, and I'll go ahead and lead in right now to talk about maybe where I'm at the game, and my personal prediction. I do think Michigan, in my opinion, is the team to pick to win the game. I'm not going to pick them to cover. I have this being, I'm going to say 20-14 Michigan over Penn State. I'm going to be surprised if Michigan is able to pull away and score this kind of a number on Penn State. And a big part of it is, Iowa, 27 points. I think Iowa is a very good defense. Have a lot of respect for them, obviously, but Iowa also has no offense whatsoever. They give you the ball constantly. It was a struggle for Michigan. I was not impressed with McCarthy and how he moved the football. The flip side, I will say, is on Penn State's side of the ball, I don't know where their points are going to come from at all. And you look at their last result against Northwestern, 17-7. Weird game, and I get it. 5 turnovers. And somebody was asking me, because I was doing some stuff trying to talk about like Texas A&M and Alabama and Missouri, Georgia, the turnovers kind of hid how those games really were behind the scenes from a projection standpoint, because you don't expect a team to turn it over 5 times like Penn State did against Northwestern or 4 times like Alabama did against Texas A&M. It's not a repeatable thing, so it tends not to really matter. My concern is, really, in spite of that, Penn State punted the ball more against Northwestern than Alabama did. They had about a yard per play less than Alabama had against Texas A&M. So even when you throw the turnovers out of the equation, especially given the fact that Northwestern turned the ball over a few times themselves, Penn State really just didn't move the ball that great regardless. So that's why I have Michigan 20-14. That's why I'm very skeptical of the model having 37-24 with such a high number. It just, to me, it seems unrealistic that these teams are going to score that many points. And now, Daniel, I'm curious for your opinion on that. I mean, do you think I'm off base? Do you think this is a high number? Your struggle bus comments seem to suggest the opposite, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
And welcome to my much better audio. You made it for 1 segment, maybe 2. I forgot to hit record on my audio, so we got crappy camera audio. Thank you for staying this long. And since you're already here, go ahead, like, subscribe, notification bell, because you get to hear me sound like this most of the time. Josh, Penn State fans are going to tell you Northwestern game was in a freaking monsoon. And because of that, you can't really blame them. Now, Ohio State fans say in 2015 they lost to Michigan State's backup quarterback because it was raining at home, and we don't let them get away with that. But this game, I kind of let him get away with it because I don't think there's really another number. There's not another analog to that poor of a performance. So I'm willing to throw it out. It's on the road. Our model says they cover. Vegas has got Michigan with a pretty healthy number, and I'm going to say they're all wrong. Give me Penn State 17, Michigan 14, and not just because I'm trying to be Team Stephen Light on this one. I think that Penn State's going to win it, and I don't really have an explanation why, other than I've seen stretches of clean offense more this year against good teams like Purdue, like not good team but good defense in Auburn, and I've got that 17-14. But Josh, tell me, what would surprise you more in this game? A Penn State win or them hitting the over? Them being both these teams.
Maybe this says a lot about where I'm at mentally, but hitting the over is more surprising to me than Penn State winning. I think Michigan is slightly more likely. I think me sleeping on the couch because my wife's a Penn State fan, even more likely. But the over is the thing that I just don't get and I don't see, and I don't understand where that number is coming from. And I'm probably completely wrong, because usually when I feel that way, I am. There's a reason Vegas is still open and making a lot of money. But yeah, the over-under just confuses me.
All right, y'all, let us know in the comments 2 things. 1, give us your score prediction in the comments, and we'll mix it up with you down there. And also let us know what would surprise you, the other team winning or both teams hitting the over. I'm interested to see why Vegas has this as such a high number, given what we're kind of trained to think about both these defenses. Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great week, and God bless.